We are live. Good morning, beautiful people. We're welcomed by another esteemed guest on Kiko's Freethinkers Forum. This is episode 141, and this is a four-time guest. And so if you guys want to sift through those archives, you go back to episode 4, 37, and 80. So it's been a while since Miss Kimberley was on the program, but this is episode 141. A lot of sifting to go through because we've had so many people on the show, but Margaret Kimberley is an author, a very important author of a book called Prejudential, Black American Presidents. And we discussed that a few times on the show previously. And it talks about basically the anti-Blackness of a lot of the U.S. presidents, pretty much all of them. You can find this component. And today we're going to continue discussing the 2024 circus coming up in November the 5th and just a plethora of issues. Angela Davis's an article she published recently about Angela Davis entitled The Cautionary Tale of Angela Davis, published on September 25th through Black Agenda Report, where she is the senior columnist and also an executive editor. And on top of that, she's a co-founder alongside the late Bruce Dixon and the late Glen Foreword. But our audience is just so excited to have you back on the show, and we welcome you back onto the show.
Thank you. It's good to be. I didn't know it had been so long. I'm not sure how many months it was, but anyway, good to see you again.
It's been 10 months to be exact.
Okay, I had a different hairstyle. This is how I measure time. One of the ways. What hairstyle?
That is
good
hilarious.
To be here. Good to see you.
Yes, and just a brief ad before we get started. We are a fully monetized channel. Everything is fully monetized. So we appreciate that. That was only made possible through the beautiful people out there that support the channel, you know, from afar and domestically. We have about 43.5% of our audience located outside of the United States. And that was always the point of the forum, was to make this an international forum. We talk a lot about geopolitics. We talk a lot about social issues that affect us here and abroad because they're both connected. It should be as simple as that, but maybe it's not as simple as that due to all the propaganda that's kind of been informed towards our direction. And so we have to find a way to provide an outlet for people to learn in different ways to combat the propaganda. And so that's what we try to do here on the forum. My first question for Margaret is, you're based in Bronx, New York.
Harlem, actually.
You're based in Harlem. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm curious just to see the reception. What are you getting from the pulse of the people on the ground in Harlem as far as the way this election is going and just everything around it?
Well, it's a strange election. I think people are united in not wanting Trump, but there is a lack of enthusiasm for Kamala Harris. She unfortunately has not been able to express a coherent message about, other than not being Trump. She's not been able to deliver a coherent message about why she should be the president and what she would do for the people and how she would govern and what her priorities would be. I think she hasn't done it because, frankly, I don't think it's something she's thought about. I get the feeling, I have to be frank, I describe her as the hollow woman. I don't think there's anything there. I think part of the reason she has the nervous laugh and the word salads it's because I don't think there's anything that she cares about. She's obviously an ambitious person, but I think she's been promoted beyond her skill set. She doesn't have any political skills at all. And she is listening to these awful Democratic Party consultants who've convinced her that there's some Republican votes she can get, going on and on about Liz Cheney endorsing her, having a Republican in her cabinet, having a bipartisan advisory commission. Republicans aren't voting for her. This idea that there are moderate Republicans, never Trumpers, there's like 5 or 6 of them. Seriously, I think they're like unicorns. They don't really exist. But she's been convinced that they do. She needs, in order to win, she needs a high turnout of Democrats. And why would you go on Fox News? Who's watching? No, there aren't any Democrats watching Fox News. It's ridiculous. But it tells you where the Democratic Party is, that it's moved to the right, that they think they can thread this needle so finely that they don't have to reach out to progressives at all. They don't have to express any intention of passing progressive policies, but fear of Trump will be enough to have this really vapid campaign, because she's a vapid person. You know, that's basically all it could be. And I saw a headline yesterday, it just cracked me up. You know, she was going to the Philadelphia suburbs to appeal to the suburbanites. And I don't know if you remember in 2016 when Senator Chuck Schumer, my senator, talked about Hillary Clinton getting moderate Republicans in Ohio and Illinois. And then, you know, that's my Chuck Schumer impersonation, which didn't work. Suburban Republicans voted for Trump. And so I think this weird campaign is a result of the ever rightward leaning shift of the Democratic Party and her own shortcomings as a person. So the only thing people talk about is Trump not coming in. People have, the people who are really enthusiastic about her, I just don't hear that very much.
Yes, and I'm just really curious about, because you kind of represented that sentiment in Harlem. I'm not surprised by that reception. I'm in the South, and I don't know if there's a difference in the geographics. That's the reason why people are reacting differently. But people in the South, at least in Tennessee, I know it's a red state, but just the Black people that I know and the Black people that I interact with are very much, there's a distancing away from Kamala. Like, it's not like it was when Obama was in office in 2008. Pretty much the country was united around Obama in 2008. Like, he had so much crossover effect from people. Independents, everyone was voting for him. It wasn't just Democrats or Republicans. But with her, she seems to have a very narrow base. With the exception of Democrats, like traditional Democrats, whatever that means anymore. And like, I see a lot of like white suburbanites that are for Harris, but I don't see the enthusiasm in Black communities for Harris like you would think.
Oh, no. Well, first of all, she was never popular. She was problematic. Her role as a prosecutor. You know, prosecutors are very problematic for Black people. Basically, their job is to put people in jail. And it's something she did with relish. You see these old videos of her talking about, prosecuting parents if their kids were truants. And they tried to say, well, it wasn't her, it was the legislature, but she was in favor of it. So it's connected to her. She's a terrible politician. I don't know if you've seen this video of her basically making fun of people, saying we need more education and fewer jails. And she said, and you had your little sign, and so you were protesting, saying more schools, fewer jails, more schools. And she's making fun. She's not taking it. She's diminishing something that's very important to Black people. So she was not. When I say a likable figure, I don't mean for this to be trivial, but that plays a role. She does not have the personality. She doesn't have, I think about Obama had this charisma. I was not a fan, but he had that charisma. First of all, we've already seen a Black president, so there's less, because like, okay, we've seen that. So, and I think, so she doesn't have the political skills of Obama and Bill Clinton. Both of them were, it's somewhat unique. They could convince you that they were in favor of something they weren't in favor of, that they liked something they didn't really like. It's quite a skill. They could connect with people. She has none of that, none. Trump as a figure is now, as president, is a little more distant. So in 2020, Biden, despite his shortcomings, people wanted to get rid of Trump. But and she's of course connected with Biden. People are not enthusiastic, having gone through 4 years of Biden. In the first 2 years when he allegedly had control of Congress, did they raise the minimum wage? No. Did, what was it? Build Back Better didn't happen. And they could blame the parliamentarian. I never heard anybody talk about a parliamentarian so much as when Biden was in office. Well, we wanted to raise the minimum wage and put that in the infrastructure bill, but the parliamentarians said no. And Manchin and Sinema, there'll be another Manchin and Sinema. I think Democrats will always, have a Manchin and a Sinema. So all of the things that people were looking to get done didn't get done. People are struggling. And whenever that was discussed, they would say, well, look at the economic indicators. They're good. Well, the data says, Wall Street says everything's fine. This implication that, if the economy is doing fine and you're just too dumb to know it, rather than speaking to the concerns that people had about inflation. And, some prices may have gone down, but groceries are still expensive. You get a lot less for your money than you used to get. That's something you can't forego eating. You may be able to cut out a vacation or spend less on this or that thing. You can't get away with not buying food, right? So all of those weaknesses now, it all falls on her. Trump is really talking constantly about immigration. I think that's red meat for his base, but I don't think just for his base. Although the Democrats are no different. Biden deported more people than Trump. He deported more Haitians than Trump. Their response to the border is to be punitive. Trump scuttled the deal, so their only defense is, well, we wanted to do what you wanted, but you killed the bill. People are, even if they don't understand completely the foreign policy issues, but they know Ukraine is getting a lot of money and there's no help for them, that there's a lot of money for Israel. People want a ceasefire. There's a variation of opinion, a range of opinion on Israel, but most people want the killing to stop. And most people don't want all of their money going for Israel to have carte blanche to kill as many civilians as they are. So, all of these are things that are not addressed or people are dismissed. They invite Netanyahu to Congress for the fourth time. They clapped and jumped up and down, clapping like trained seals. And even if you don't know much about this issue, these people haven't done anything for you. Mm-hmm. So I think all of those things work against her. And even though people don't want Trump back, having lived through Trump, I'm also hearing people say, well, I lived through Trump before. I don't want him, but the world didn't end, and it's the scare tactics. We're going to be concentration camps. We have to flee the country. We have to do, you didn't have to do it. No matter how you felt about them, basically people's lives didn't change. Mm-hmm. So, and even if you think about the things that would change, so for example, the Supreme Court, the federal judiciary, but Democrats messed that up. So it's something they go on and on and on about, but they let Ruth Bader Ginsburg hang around, and Obama didn't make the recess appointment. And so, so they haven't made a good case. They will get the votes of diehard Democrats, but as far as being like Obama and pulling in people who had been disengaged, that was a problem for the Democrats because those people came out for him. They didn't come out for the Democratic Party. The people who were disengaged, they went, once his name was off the ballot, they went right back to being disengaged. They didn't come out for Hillary Clinton. So I think she has a similar problem. So it's both personal about her, systemically about the Democrats, and there's a larger issue too that isn't discussed very much. Politics in this country is controlled by, I call them oligarchs, wealthy people. They came out with some numbers about how 3 billionaires had given Trump $200 billion. And well, Kamala Harris has raised $1 billion. I mean, we're talking about these, political action committees, and the Citizens United, which said there's no limit on how much money you can take in. So you have this individual donor limit, which is a joke because you also have these PACs. But rich people decide what happens in this country. So I think people have a basic understanding that there's somebody whose needs are being met, but it's not them. So all of these things have combined to reduce the level of enthusiasm for Kamala Harris.
We're going to continue the conversation, but I was curious, something that struck me during the second presidential debate, if you can even call it that as a joke, but when we saw that, I thought it was interesting, the reaction, and I have my own personal views about what's going to actually go down. I won't share them right now with this or whatever. We're actually going to have election night coverage here on the forum, November 5th. We have a full packed house of people coming in, and I'm going to make a huge announcement later on some of the social media outlets. But my thing about Kamala, and I get this from a lot of people again, there's still people questioning like her blackness. And I'm not one of those type of people. I couldn't care less, but honestly, I get this obsession with race in this country. There just is. There's an obsession with it, but it's also an undertone that is kind of being overshadowed by the media, but they don't want to admit that this is an issue. It is an issue because especially with people who are more conservative minded, and there's a lot of people in the country like that across the board. These people are, and there's kind of a point to be made. These people are telling me, Kiko, why can't she just say that she's black and just own it? She would defend Israel quicker than she would say that she's black. And it's just, that's a very interesting, I'm like, wow, it's a weird kind of conjecture, but at the same time, it's like, what is making it just so hard to be, to kind of silence the doubts? Like, why are the doubts there, I guess?
The doubts are about her. People don't like her. I think that's it. I am like you. I don't care how she identifies. I could care less. I think of her as a black person, but I don't care that other people don't. I'm not interested in, somebody said her grandmother was really white or.
Oh gosh, yeah.
I just don't care. I saw a picture, the lady's very light skinned. I'm like, all right, who cares? So that to me is a triviality. But I think it's a bigger picture. It tells you a lot more about her because the Democratic Party is not even going through the motions anymore. So Joe Biden lied. He claimed, for example, he was going to raise the minimum wage. They're not even bothering to do that now. So, and between her clumsy politics and the rightward shift of the Democratic Party, where she claimed she put collard greens in the tub, and said I remember it was a couple years ago now, she claimed she celebrated Kwanzaa as a child. And I'm like, no, you did not. Your Indian mother, first of all, Kwanzaa was not a thing when she was a little kid. That's first of all. Mm-hmm. Secondly, her Indian mother was not celebrating. Why are you claiming? I don't care that she didn't celebrate Kwanzaa, but why are you claiming you did? It just makes you look like a phony. Mm-hmm. And she always looks like a phony. And I think that inability to connect with people, the refusal of the Democratic Party's commitment to austerity, to neoliberalism, which comes out in policies. I think if she had just one initiative that improved the lives of working people, nobody would be I don't think there would not be as much discussion about her ethnicity or how she identifies. It wouldn't be an issue if she said we're gonna pass Build Back Better this time. And that's why I need a Democratic Congress. We need a solid majority so we can get these things done. And because she doesn't say these things, I think people can be distracted by, is she more Indian than black, or how should I think of her, or she's not going to do anything. She's not going to do anything to help black people because oligarchs won't let her. And she is not nimble enough to try and come up with something, anything that's going to help black people. So what do? Obama has, I just said he had these political skills. He's lost them because, his decision to scold black men went over like a lead balloon. That was certainly unhelpful to her. And then they put together this crazy, this is going to help black men, crypto protection, and what the hell else was it? I mean, it was something so crazy, I can't even remember what it was. It was money for entrepreneurs, black people and others, because, I mean, you cannot have a program that's specifically for black people. You can't do that. So it just, and it was all very clumsy. It was pandering, and it was bad pandering. So I think that's why there's this interest in how she identifies, because it's clear she's not going to help working people. And she doesn't even know how to pretend that she's going to help. Remember Bill Clinton ran, "It's the economy, stupid." Now, he was, in fact, a conservative. Everything from the media consolidation to the crime bill, to all kinds of things he did that were on the right. But he didn't run that. He ran as if he were, a liberal Democrat. Same thing with Obama. Obamacare was not some revolutionary thing. I call it Nixon care. It's what Nixon proposed like 50 years ago. So that's her problem. It's the lack of substance, the inability to express anything that, Bill Clinton said, "It's the economy, stupid. I'm going to focus like a laser beam on the economy." She can't seem to address that. And that's why there are all these other questions.
I think the most significant moment in the debate, the second presidential debate, was actually something that Trump said. And he said, when he made the comment that you hate Israel, and then he said after that, he followed up a few sentences later and said, "In your own way, you don't like the Arabs either." She had no response to that, because he's aware of the base that he's attacking. And he knows that she needs that support, the pro-Palestinian voices. That's a big part of the traditional Democratic Party, whether people want to admit that or not. And I think that's going to cost her the election personally, because it's disengaging people. And it's also, people giving third parties a look. You have Jill Stein running, you have Cornel West running, you have Claudia de la Cruz, you have other people running. They've always ran on peace platforms and stuff, but even more so now with the genocide going on, they're even more attractive to some of the voters who are just so disengaged with this warmongering Democratic Party. And the fact that people are taking in the Cheneys with open arms, like these are the same people who got us in the wars. So how do you make that make any kind of sense at all? Like I don't understand.
It doesn't make any sense. First of all, the genocide that's, I think, the biggest elephant in the room. There are people who cannot, Israel's war crimes are so blatant, are so obvious. People cannot go along with it. And it is all because of Joe Biden. It's because Joe Biden ran over there after October 7th and wrote a blank check to Netanyahu, and the money has kept going. And AIPAC owns Congress. Let's just be real. They brag about it. Why can't I say it? They took out 2 black members of Congress, Jamal Bowman in New York and Cori Bush in near St. Louis. I think it's St. Louis, her district. So all they do is argue about who loves Israel more. I love Israel more. No, I love Israel more. She's going to lose votes because of that. And Muslims, voters, Arab descent, are not voting for her. So in a state like Michigan, which has a large Arab American population, that's a state, that's one of those battleground states. She can't win without it. And now she's in danger of losing it. So they trotted out a group of, like the Uncle Tom Muslims, Muslims for Harris. They've gone over like a lead balloon too. So she's not going to get those votes. She's just not. They can't hide the subservience to Israel. So, I'm digressing a little bit here. U.S. troops are now in Israel. They're manning these missile batteries because Iran is going to attack Israel. They are dragging, well, they're neocons in the foreign policy establishment. They've long wanted a war with Iran. Israel wants a war with Iran, so they're all working together. So you have U.S. troops in Israel. We have Joe Biden starting World War III, and it's rarely discussed. It's very strange to me. But I think there's a general feeling of unease, regardless of how many people know anything about it. But this issue is going to cost her the election, and people who traditionally might not have been comfortable with third-party candidates, to your point, now they are. Now I'm a Jill Stein Ware support. I'm a Green, so I'm happy to see it. And this argument that you're going to cost the election is falling on deaf ears. People are there. It's hard to make the case that, well, Trump would be worse. Israel is starving people. Secretary of State Blinken has helped them lie, because if that's true, that means they should not have gotten any U.S. aid. They should not have gotten any U.S. weapons. So he lied to make sure they could do it. We see people being displaced. We see Israel now attacking Lebanon. So to say, well, Trump would be worse. People are like, well, how much? People being burned alive in their a tent hospital, a refugee camp hospital. So I suppose Trump could be worse. That things can always be worse, but it's hard to make that argument when Biden, being joined at the hip with Israel and not even knowing how to pretend that claim, well, we're working on a ceasefire and then it's over. So a few days ago, they implied if humanitarian aid doesn't get through, we might have an arms embargo. Then they walk it back like 48 hours later. Well, actually, no. So they go through this pretense, but the killing continues. It goes on and on. And so it's something that's hurting her, basically. It is really hurting her. And it should. I personally, I'm not concerned about the Democratic Party being hurt. The Democratic Party needs to die. It's outlived its usefulness. Its policies are detrimental. They allow the Democrats, they can pretend to be left-ish when they aren't at all. So people who should have dumped them a long time ago keep voting for them. They need to go. So I'm not concerned about the Democratic Party being hurt. If they were so wonderful, why are you worried about the Green Party? Why are you worried about tiny? You can raise $1 billion. You mean to tell me you can raise $1 billion, but you still might lose Michigan? Well, you need to change something, I guess. So yes, people are taking a look, and I think that's a very healthy thing. The only thing, people say, I'd like to vote for a third party, but they can't win. They can't win because you don't vote for them. Don't be afraid. Stop being afraid. But it's the fear. It's that fear that controls people, especially Black people, who, despite any misgivings about a particular Democratic candidate, know that Republicans are the white people's party. It's been 60 years, Lyndon Johnson in 1964, since most white people voted for a Democratic presidential candidate. 60 years of most white people voting for Republicans. Ultimately, I see these polls that say, Trump could get 20% of the Black vote. I don't believe that. I don't think so. It'll be interesting to see what it is. But this hold on Black people is gone. It's gone because any support for anything that means anything to us is gone. So obviously.
Yeah, I won't get too caught up in the polls and stuff. It's hard. You can't believe them at all. I definitely think that there's definitely way more Black support and across demographics for him this time around than even the last time. But that also plays into people leaving the Democratic Party. I think there's a lot of elements that aren't being factored in. It's not just simply because of him gaining popularity with these groups. It's also because people are disengaged with that side, because unfortunately people are still succumb to the two-party system. And so they feel like they can't leave the system. So they join the other side of the system, which is so frustrating because there are other options. And my biggest case for a third-party candidate would be if you at least give them a possibility to get on television, that's all the reason for me to support a third party candidate to get 5, 10, 15% of the national vote. I'm all for it. I don't care. Winning to us may be a different winning strategy, because we have to build this beyond 2024. It can't just be a one cycle thing. We have to build this towards the future if we're going to grow a third party movement, and we have to stick to the principles.
Mm-hmm.
We can't let fear keep this movement in some kind of a vacuum. And that's what they do. I mean, the frustrating part with my friends is like they don't offer any kind of like policy. Like, I believe if Democrats offered policy, they would get the support that they needed. But you can't justify a genocide. I'm sorry, you just can't. You cannot justify a genocide. And the fear of Trump getting in is, to me, is irrelevant, because then you throw this other bullshit, Project 2025 and all this other stuff. It's just, I'm sorry, it's on deaf ears, because we already see it happening. Like, we already see we've been under a Democratic administration. So why are you bringing this up, this hypothetical, when we're living the nightmare already?
And so they were harping on Project 2025, this policy paper, the right-wing wish list, which has already been brought into being sometimes by Democrats. So for one of the things Bill Clinton did was his welfare so-called reform. That was a right-wing fantasy for decades, and it's a Democrat that made it happen. For 60 years, you had the right to seek public assistance from the days of the New Deal and FDR. Bill Clinton, a Democrat, is the one who got rid of it. So I was not one who succumbed to this Project 2025 fear-mongering. Anyway, Obamacare was a dream of these right-wing think tanks. But first, they talk about Project 2025, the right wing, blah, blah, blah. And then she starts bragging about how many Republicans will be in her cabinet. So I'm like, well, wait a minute. Are we supposed to be afraid of Project 2025 or not? The Dick Cheney, Liz Cheney love fest. I thought we were supposed, on the one hand, Democrats are like, they're fascists, they're terrible. Trump is, Hitler's cousin. It's the worst thing ever. And then it's like, well, why are you telling us about having Republicans in your cabinet? I thought the Republicans were evil. I guess they're not. So then what do you got for me? So there have been these contradictory, and I'll say it again, it's because of Kamala Harris's lack of conviction about anything that she can be blown about like this, which tells me also she would be a terrible president. What does she stand for? Nothing. She can't even, some of her predecessors didn't stand for anything either, but she can't even pretend. So, so that is a problem. You can't go from Project 2025 boogeyman to I'll have a Republican in my cabinet.
I had to get the Angela Davis piece, was so interesting. Like, I've read a lot of your articles over the years, but this cautionary tale of Angela Davis is interesting, because this is the same person who talked about prison abolition.
Yes.
And a self-described Marxist. Like, I mean, I don't understand this. And this kind of leads to the question, I'm kind of intertwining different things, but like, what does that say about the left? Like, where is the left in the United States after this election? Even not, if we got people like that who were once like revolutionary in nature, openly supporting, like, I guess the duopoly or the one party state, whatever it is, and then self-described Marxist or whatever. It has nothing to do with prison reform. The Democrats are openly like supportive of the prison system.
Yeah, I wrote this every 4 years. Angela Davis tells us how much she loves the Democrats, and but on the other hand, claims to still be a Marxist. She might say, "I'm a communist with a small c" or something. Well, what does that mean? She's not a revolutionary anymore. She just isn't, and she has a right to be. But people should not be fooled, and that's why I wrote that. She. I recall that it's a few weeks ago now, but she had it was from I guess she was on a Democracy Now! Interview talking about, it was from 2020 when Biden announced Harris would be his running mate. And she's holding up this paper. Isn't this exciting that Kamala Harris is going to be the running mate? And I'm like, no, actually, it isn't. Why do you think it's so wonderful? She said we should vote for Hillary Clinton. She said if you didn't, you were a narcissist. Well, if I was a narcissist, I wouldn't support Hillary Clinton. I had to write about it then. Every 4 years, it's Angela Davis saying you have to vote for the Democrats. And she can say that, but the rest of us get to say, well, this is contradictory for you to claim to be a socialist and then say we have to vote for the Democratic Party, that all our only options are electoral, that there's no other way. I mean, if you look at, what did Biden try to say? The most pro-labor, they just make up stuff. The most pro-labor president since FDR. No, he's not. He broke the railroad workers' strike. They broke the strike. So not pro-labor, not at all. Kamala Harris, there's nothing progressive about anything. She waffles, she goes back and forth. As I say, she, sticks her finger in the air and sees which way the wind is blowing. But so, Angela Davis can be whatever she wants to be, but we should not forget that, and we should call people out, because I think that's a very dangerous position. And anyone who's on the left, it's like, the left is small. I mean, if you're talking about people who are socialist or anti-imperialist, anybody working for the public good, it's a small number of people. But we have to just say that and talk about how do we build left politics in this country. But I thought it was important for people to say, everybody, I don't know how old you are, but I was a kid. You probably weren't born yet, were you?
I'm 42. I'm 42.
You were not born yet. But when she was on trial, I believe it was 1970. I mean, it was a huge worldwide international support for her. And she was acquitted in that case, being accused of giving guns to, there was a attempted prison break in Marin County, California. She was accused of providing the guns, and the trial was, she was a fugitive for a while, and there was a huge trial. It was, it was the days of the liberation movement. She was it was huge. And, but that's not who she is now. People think she was a Black Panther. She was never a member of the Black Panther. She was always a Marxist, she said, but you can't be a Marxist and support the Democratic Party. Although apparently the Communist Party USA, they used to do that every 4 years. So you had to, vote for Democrats. But so I thought it was important for people to keep these things in mind, not to stand on ceremony, not to think of, because of who she was 50 years ago, that you can't critique or question her. You can question anybody. And so I did.
Why is it that we only have a handful of academics that openly support third parties, or they say dismantle the two-party system? Because I don't expect much from celebrities, but it kind of extends in Americana with celeb culture and academia. A lot of these prestigious institutions, you don't see a lot of prominent people and voices openly saying, like, screw the two-party system. We need to build outside of it. Like, why is that? I think I know the answer, but I want to get your perspective on that.
Well, it's risky. In academia, people rely on being in the good graces of these universities. And as we've seen with, somebody said, I don't know who said it first, I'd like to credit them, that these, especially these elite universities, they're hedge funds with education as a side hustle. So they join in crushing the protest in favor of Palestine, getting students arrested, doxxed, suspended, expelled, faculty being disciplined if they say anything other than supporting Israel. College presidents themselves. I mean, that was, why would you get rid of the president of Harvard and University of Pennsylvania and Columbia? they're gone. They're all gone because they were insufficiently pro-Zionist. That was the purpose of making an example of them. So that's how academia operates. The celebrity culture is one I think is very dangerous. Um, People are distracted by accusations against P. Diddy or something. Somebody asked me, what do you think about P. Diddy? I said, I'm not thinking about him. I'm thinking about World War III. I can't I can't go there. So and then there was a time though when there were celebrities who were activists. I'm thinking about people like Harry Belafonte. I'm thinking about Ossie Davis and Ruby Dee. They're all passed away now, who had careers in the entertainment field, but who were political people and had left politics and had Black-oriented politics. But those days are gone, and perhaps with what politics are like now, maybe that's a good thing. Maybe it's a good thing that we're not depending on celebrities. Um, but it's also problematic because part of that culture goes into politics is who do you like, who do you not like, not let's talk about the substance. What does this person stand for and that person stand for? What have they said? What have they done? So I think that's very important, and that this, celebrity worship is something that's I think, very harmful.
By the way, shout out to Green Party of New Jersey. They've been on the show a few times, at least Christina Amir Khalil. But I must say, and I've raised this up to Christina when she was on the show, I said I have an issue with the moniker progressive Democrat. I don't even know what that means. To me, it's an oxymoron.
Mm-hmm.
What's progressive about being a Democrat? Because people use progressive Democrat. What exactly does that mean in the structure that we've discussed over and over in these 4 episodes that we've had? How can you be progressive in such a system that's meant to be anti-progressive?
You can't be. That's why these progressive, the squad and whoever, that they're all phonies. They're all endorsing Biden. They're endorsing Harris. They may say, something against the genocide, but still, well, then if you're endorsing Harris, then you don't care about the genocide because there's been some double talk about who's AOC at the convention. She's working tirelessly for a ceasefire, and then Kamala Harris says, I would not have an arms embargo. I stand with Israel all the time. Well, then you were lying. What happened during that when they broke the railroad workers' strike that I referred to? Did any of the progressives speak up? No. So the Democratic Party, they make sure that if anybody comes to Congress talking like a progressive, they make sure they are marginalized. So they silence themselves. They may speak up and claim they want Medicare for all at election time. They wouldn't even remember the Republicans. The speaker that I can't remember his name. He wasn't there very long. He had to go through like 15 or 16 roll call votes in order for his caucus to make him the speaker. And all these progressives, when Nancy Pelosi was still the speaker, people said, demand Medicare for all. Don't vote for her unless she's going to support Medicare for all. They all folded. So it seems that only Republicans have conviction. So no, there aren't any progressive Democrats, maybe on the local level. Actually, that's something I want to mention. People need to give more attention to local and state races because sometimes they have more impact on your life. And there aren't enough, there's not enough activity around voting in state and local elections. There's a big fall off, the off-year elections and so forth. And the Democratic Party, they lost 900 seats across the country when Obama was president. They didn't care. Why do you have states outlawing abortion? That wouldn't happen if people were as engaged in local politics as much as they were presidential election years. So I just wanted to add that. But you're absolutely right about allegedly progressive Democrats. It's alleged.
That point you brought up is actually the purpose of us having, is the irony of us having the election night coverage here on the forum November the 5th, is because people think that they're going to get, we don't care who wins the election. We care more so about, like, what are we going to do between the lines after the election? Like, what can we be doing, like, every day, informing people, educating people, organizing people to focus on the issues that mean the most to them, as opposed to watching this type of an unfair, money buys out the politicians type system. That's all it is. I mean, I was in Michigan last week with my wife, and there were probably 800 ads the time in 5 days that I was there. There were probably at least 800 ads. And I'm thinking, look at the money that could be spent on something else besides these political ads. And just my thing with people after this election is, I have a lot of liberal friends. They're good people, but they're brainwashed. They're brainwashed just like the same people that accuse that they're brainwashed. You guys are brainwashed. I love you, but you're brainwashed. And I say that because when Trump is not in 2028, you're going to still justify it and say, well, it's someone that supported Trump, so I can't support that person. So Trumpism is going to be here regardless of Trump being there or not. So how do we get people to see that? Or maybe they just don't want to see it. But what would be the biggest argument to make? Okay, what are you going to say the next time around when Trump is not in office?
Well, I say several things. First of all, I say, at what point is it the right moment? It's several things. Well, this is not the time. We got to get rid of Trump. That's the most important thing. Really? So when is the right time? Every 4 years, it's the wrong time. And our material conditions, our living conditions get worse and worse. The military budget gets bigger and bigger. Wars and risk of war goes up and up and up. When is the right time? And I just say that to people, and people get mad because, we're told only the mega Republicans they're the only brainwashed people. Oh, no, they are not. They're no more brainwashed than liberals. You're absolutely right about that. People who, are so brainwashed, they get mad at you for asking a question. They literally will. It's like, well, what's the big deal about Kamala Harris? But Trump. It's, that's just, they're afraid to offer any critique, afraid to ask a question, afraid to talk about their own lives. It's all based on fear. And I think sometimes you just have to tell people, it's like, okay, ask you, really, are you hearing yourself right now, that you are diminishing yourself? You're saying that your life and the fact that they're doing nothing to help you, that doesn't matter. And if you want to be a Democrat, then you at least have to oppose something they've said. It's like, okay, you're going to tell me I have to vote for you to save the Supreme Court. Well, tell me what you're doing to make sure that happens. What are you doing legislatively that the courts can't touch? What's your plan? Rather than just to let these people harangue you into voting for them, there would have been no overturning of Roe v. Wade if Obama, the one who had the best opportunity, codified Roe. He claimed he was in 2008 when he was running. Then he gets into office, and a few months later he says, well, that's not my highest priority. It wasn't his priority at all. He lied. He didn't care. And that means the rest of the Democratic Party didn't care that much. So fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. I don't believe if Harris wins and if she has majorities in the House and the Senate, is she really going to codify Roe? I'm not convinced that she would. So nobody should even make that their reason for voting for her. When people show you who they are, believe them. And the Democratic Party is the party of the wealthy, the party of the weapons manufacturers, the party of Wall Street. What did Obama do to save Black people's homes when the market crashed? Nothing. Most Black people who have any assets, any wealth, that's tied up in their home. And people lost their homes, and too bad. Sorry to hear that. So, and that's another thing. People don't make the connection, having had a Black president who didn't do very much. People are, they're like, what's the big deal? Even if you do, don't succumb to this whether she's black or not argument. What was the big deal? We had that already. So
I think because of just the consistency with which this topic keeps coming up with the lobbying, I'm going to have to do a special episode on it because I have a vested interest in it. Even the abortion issue, the reason why it's not going to be codified is because if you go to Open Secrets, they do a good job of having these corporations and these names almost like hidden to the public as far as like the way they disguise the names of these corporations that contribute to the anti-abortion lobbies, which are very rampant in Congress. You have a lot of religious lobbies in Congress. AIPAC is one of those. It's technically a religious lobby, and it promotes a certain ideology that you have a clear breach of separation of church and state in Congress with this going on. And if you go to your favorite politician, you can see who donates money to your favorite politician. And I guarantee you that a lot of these people are in bed with these anti-abortion people. I mean, Nancy Pelosi was very clearly not in support of abortion this last time around when it was overturned. Like, it was very clear that a lot of Democrats.
She's a couple of years before, she said, we need to, not focus so much on abortion. It's not an important issue anymore. She said that.
Of course.
So
and there's a reason why they're saying things like that. Every once in a while, they'll kind of they'll show you the hand a little bit. And it makes you wonder why. Like when they say stuff like, oh, we defeated the socialist, Bernie, which is ridiculous in itself because he's more of a social democrat anyway. But just to make the point, they're telling you, hey, we don't have anything to do with socialism. Like, we don't like socialism either. We'll tell you now when it's convenient to tell you. And they are a right-wing party. The Democrats are clearly a right-wing party. That's what they have been ever since they decided not to be a Labor Party anymore. And that's the way people have to look at it instead of just I mean, when you have two sides of a coin, how can you argue far left, far right? Is just ridiculous. Like the psychology that's used in this two-party system. But I want to make sure that we cover this before you go. The weaponization of anti-Semitism, which is honestly just a form of censorship. To me, it's a way to censor people. How has it become so effective? Is it just simply an AIPAC thing? Or when did this really start to augment, in your opinion? When did this start to accelerate, in your opinion, this whole talk of anti-Semitism?
Well, it's a weapon. It's a weapon used because most people are disgusted by what they see the U.S. doing in Israel, with Israel, rather, against the Palestinian people. It's war crimes are defined. Genocide is defined. There was a 1948, I believe, Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide. I think that's the full name. And it describes what genocide is. It's the intention to target a group of people. It can be killing. It can be mental harm. It can be starvation. All of the things that by definition, Israel is committing genocide. War crimes are defined. Collective punishment is a war crime according to the Geneva Conventions. However, and so it's so blatant that the only way to protect Israel is just to crush anybody who's in opposition. It's really quite simple because so the only tool you have left is for people to be afraid to speak up. So for example, there's a professor at Columbia, law professor, Catherine Franke, who Columbia's trying to fire her. And she got legal counsel, but the law firm, some of the partners were uncomfortable. So they fired her as a client. So you don't even have legal recourse. The press, the corporate media working in concert with the state, as they do with other issues too. So all you have is brute force, trying to shame people, trying to frighten people into speaking up, into silencing themselves. So that's why the term anti-Semitism doesn't mean anything anymore to me. It just means they've said this themselves. It's equated with criticism of Israel. So why should I be afraid of the word? There's nothing for, why should I be scared? Yes, I do criticize. I am anti-Zionist, and I have good reason to be so. So there is a definition, the IAHR. Am I getting the acronym right?
I just
Anyway,
even the word Semitic was original. I think it meant
yes.
towards the languages. It wasn't um towards a group of people, but even people who are so-called Semitic people, it's crazy how somehow those people aren't Semitic, but a certain group of people are Semites, but these people aren't Semites. Like it's really
Well,
it's
they're
a
all Semitic people. The International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, IHRA. So they have
yes.
said that criticism of Israel is by definition anti-Semitic. Now that's a way to shut people up, but what it says to me is I'm going to say whatever I want to say. You basically something that was connected with hatred, bigotry against a group of people because of who they are, in this case Jewish people. Now it means you can't criticize this state. Well, you can go ahead and call me that if you want to. I'm not afraid of that term anymore. You're the ones that made it lose all of its meaning. So it's a weapon to silence, a weapon to the censorship against anybody who speaks against Israel. It's political. I mentioned the members of Congress who have been taken out, and AIPAC brags about having taken them out. So why can't I say so? The way the media, they'll say this passive voice, bombs fall on hospital in Israel. Well, fell from where? People killed, and even the United Nations, they're so afraid. Israel has killed UN workers, has fired on UN peacekeepers, and you'll see these headlines, the UN peacekeepers fired upon. By whom? X number of civilians died. Died how? Why? Who did it? And so this, the establishment just go political establishment. They're all, and we talked about this in the debate. It happens all over in U.S. politics. Everybody fighting about who's more, protective of Israel, which means the people aren't being represented. We don't have a Congress. AIPAC has a Congress. Big Pharma has a Congress. Wall Street has a Congress. We don't have one. So, I think people need to be called out and said, okay, if that's what anti-Semitism means, you can call me that if you want to, but I'm not going to stop being an anti-Zionist, because anti-Zionism is racism. Zionism is inherently oppressive. And, we're talking after Israel assassinated other Hamas leader, Yahya Sinwar. And I found a video of him saying, he was talking about George Floyd. And he said that kind of racism that killed George Floyd is what the Israelis do to the Palestinian people. So I'm not going to be silent about Zionism.
And before we go, I just want to say, since we're on this topic, it's mindful of people, and we've grown a lot in the last 2 months, especially because of TikTok. I want to share my secrets with some of you independent media outlets out there and YouTubers, because I want to share what I get and pass it, spread it to everyone else. But yet, even with TikTok, there's a lot of censorship on that. And there was supposedly more open information towards Palestine on TikTok. Now, when you do the keywords and stuff, you have to be very careful, because they're removing videos on TikTok, even not from, even talked about the Gaza situation right now, the genocide. They won't even, you can't even put certain words in there. They just automatically remove the hashtags, and they've removed a lot of my videos that I put up. So don't be fooled. They're censoring everybody, and it's getting worse.
TikTok, Meta, Facebook. We post our articles every week on our Black Agenda Report articles on Facebook. And now the last couple of months, we have articles removed immediately. As soon as you hit send, it's gone. It could be Israel. It could be another issue. Twitter is, they amplify certain people. They shadow ban other people. YouTube, they take channels down if the government tells them to. There is a great site called African Stream.
Yes.
Blinken and Secretary of State claimed they were Russian agents. They're gone. Facebook takes them down. YouTube took them down. Google even seized their email addresses. They can't even use Gmail anymore. And it's just
Wow.
made up. Yes. So you're absolutely right. But I say we have to use these platforms as long as we can. These platforms should be regulated in this way. They should be protected as public utilities. We should have a right to be able to use them. So YouTube, unless you're using slurs, unless you're threatening to kill somebody, they should not be able to deplatform anyone. But they do. They took Radio Sputnik. They're gone as of this week.
Really?
Yep, they're gone. All those great programs, that's over. So it can be Israel. It can be being anti-war. The oppression and the censorship are being ramped up. It's because of this rush to war. And, I remember when I was growing up, I was told that's what the Soviet Union did. They restricted what people could read and see. Well, that's what we have here.
Yeah, this is very unfortunate. I was not even aware of the African Stream, and then to hear Radio Sputnik also taken down. And RT, that happened, what, 3-4 years ago?
Well, it's even worse. They used to, they allowed some RT shows to be on Facebook. You can't anymore. They're gone. Because, and why can't I watch RT? I'm not watching RT at gunpoint. Nobody's forcing me to. Why can't I see what I want? Why is the US government determining what I can and can't read or listen to? That's censorship. It's a violation of the First Amendment also. It's unconstitutional. But that's where we are.
I am shocked that they haven't taken down Al Jazeera. Like, I really am.
They've taken down, Facebook took down The Cradle, a great site. You can still see it on Twitter. You can still see them on their own website, taken down African Stream, taken down Radio Sputnik. It's quite awful. And when you think about the numbers of people who are accessing independent media, it's a small number, but apparently even a few people is too much.
Oh, they're reaching people. We're reaching people, though. And they know that. They know that we're reaching people. I think they took down Rachel Levin's YouTube. I think they reinstalled it, though.
They did. They reinstated her and a couple of other people, not African Stream, because Blinken himself claimed they were Russian agents. So they've claimed that the Samidoun network is Canada officially called them a terrorist group, but the U.S. has sanctioned them, claiming they're a front for the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine. So you can't give them money. If you amplify them in any way, you can be accused of giving material support to terror. It's quite terrible. It's quite terrible.
Right before I let you go, I had to get this in because I had talked to Diane Sarah about a month ago. Have they put you on any kind of list at all, like censorship ban list or anything?
Not yet. I mean, as I said, some of our Facebook posts are taken down immediately. But who knows? Who knows? Maybe not today, but maybe tomorrow. Could be.
Yeah, I commend you for all the work that you do at Black Agenda Report and Black Agenda Radio. I know my audience is very happy when you come onto the show. And this is always a great experience when I'm on here with you. And this was no exception. This is episode 141 with Margaret Kimberley, author of Prejudential, Black America and the Presidents, senior columnist at Black Agenda Report, one of the co-founders. And I just want to say thank you again from Kiko's Freethinkers Forum to you. And we can't wait to have you back on the show down the road.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. Peace out.
Peace out. See you soon, okay?
Okay, thank you.